our world has changed hugely. Childhood has changed. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Australia. I grew up 10 blocks from the ocean, which was lucky me. I have 2 sisters, an older and a younger. We were gone for the day. We would go to the beach for the day, and then we'd go to my nana's up the road for lunch, and we'd come back to the beach, and we'd be home before the street lights are on. One of the questions I always ask parents is, do you even let your children walk around the block now? And a lot of children now don't even go to the corner, let alone be gone for the entire day, doing goodness knows what. My husband grew up here. He tells lovely stories about rainy season and an inner tube in the storm drains. And I challenge any parent to say that they would let their child do that unknowingly now, because they wouldn't. There's too much risk. Allegedly. You can move on, thanks. So what has changed? Technology. We now have a generation of children that have fabulous thumbs. Their thumbs are brilliantly developed, and it has absolutely no consequence on their learning whatsoever. Family structures have changed. People are not being raised with someone at home. Toys have changed. Now kids want a toy that does things, whereas I grew up with not that many toys, and a brick could do all sorts of things. Freedom and risk-taking, as I talked about. Wider access to after-school activities. One of the things I come across a lot is children who are so scheduled that you need to say, when are the children playing? And they look at me and they go, but they're doing ballet, and they're doing this, or they're doing something, or they've got remedial lessons, they've got after-school lessons, they've got this. When are they playing? Oh, but they're doing after activities. It's not the same. It's not the same as having freedom to go out and express yourself, take risks. Imaginary play is completely out the window. And also there's an increased recognition and diagnosis of autism spectrum disorders and sensory disorders. That's my area of specialty. You can go on, thanks. So what are the results? Children aren't playing in the same way that they used to. Those of you who know about child development know that babies are born with reflexes, and they test them when they're born, they check all that. Nobody ever tests that they go. So most of these reflexes should be gone by the age of 18 months, 2 years, some of them 6 months. The oldest child I've tested with a retained reflex that should have been gone by the age of 2 is 12 years old. Because they were never put on the floor to play. They were sat in a bumbo seat, in a jumper chair, because we love our children and we want to have all the bits. You know, all mothers, when they're having a baby, they want to have the stroller and they want to have the little walker, you know, the ring walkers where the babies move around. Those things are terrible for children's development. I say to mums, buy a beautiful blanket and a few toys on the floor and let them be on the floor. But floors are dirtier, apparently, now than they used to be. I get that. No, it's dirty, they'll get germs, they'll get sick. Well, I'm still alive, and most of us are still alive, and we were left like that. Whereas now we feel this need to entertain the children and give them all the gadgets and have all these things. I'm all right. I'm okay. Lack of unstructured play I've already talked about. Now, this one is quite controversial. We focus on academic skills too early. Children are now, and this is controversial because of ECDA and ECDB, and we're all pushing everyone into school, children are not ready to learn that early. A parent approached me about a child who's going into ECDB, and they have asked for writing pencils in ECDB. And I said, sorry? You mean like wax crayons so they can colour? No, so they can teach them to write. She said, surely you know that that's... No. It's too early. So I'm the one catching all the kids who still can't write and who can't sequence and can't do all of those things because they were given tools that their bodies aren't ready for. And their bodies aren't ready because they're not playing or developing in the same way from birth that they were. And we're pushing the academics far too early. So I can guarantee you that in 10, 12 years' time, we are going to see children who are struggling more because they're being pushed into academics far too early. ECD-A and ECD-B shouldn't be seeing worksheets or textbooks. It's too early. They should still be putting things together with their hands and exploring things with their bodies. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about sensory development later. But a textbook in an ECD classroom, to see a textbook and a child sitting at a textbook, it honestly makes my skin crawl. I'm going, oh. It's really, really scary what we're expecting of our children. And then we're punishing them because they are behind. But we're not allowing their bodies to develop in the way that they need to before they get to academics. I think on my next... Okay, we'll leave that bit. Oh, sorry, one thing on there. If a child can't read, the first thing I do is I go all the way back, get a birth history and everything. The amount of parents who say to me, oh, isn't it wonderful, my child, they didn't crawl. They just walked. It's fabulous. They're so clever. Yeah, no. Crawling is incredibly important to reading. So always think of that when you're thinking of children that you know. That's just my little hint for everyone. You can move on. That's fine. Can you go to the next slide where there's a picture? Okay. Can you read that? Sort of. Okay, all right. If you just get a little picture, I'll give you a little picture. See the little grey triangle at the top there? Okay, that's learning. Can you see all of the foundation stuff that needs to be in place first? When all of these foundations in place, the child is able to learn. Take out one of those blocks and the child isn't able to learn. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So the first layer at the bottom is the nervous system. And that's where I talked about the primitive reflexes. So you can imagine the 13-year-old child who I assessed who still had those primitive reflexes. He didn't even have the bottom of the triangle. And he was called dull. He was just, he just can't write a story. He's not going to get any, he's going to just fail his grade 7 exams. And we dealt with that. Very simple. It's very, very simple to deal with. Body stuff is very simple to deal with. And then you go into your sensory systems. How many kids do we have these days who bump into things all the time? They walk around the classroom and they whack into the person next to them or they bump. Do you know why? Because children are spending far too much time now in a two-dimensional world and not moving around in the third dimension like we did. They're stuck in front of a screen or a computer game or something. They're not moving. The amount of times I've had parents come and say, oh yes, we always talk about a daily routine. The child comes home from school and they bath and then they sit so they don't get dirty and then they can go to bed. Okay, that's great. So when are they moving? You often get these days children who can't copy from their book to the board. And that's all well and good. You can put another book here and they can copy from here to here. But how are they going to drive a car? Because to drive a car, we need to go up and down. So it's all well and good. You can accommodate someone who can't copy from the board or they really struggle, so you just do left and right. But they're the ones that are going to be driving the cars next to you, which is a problem. And that comes from too much screen time because our world has changed. Our children are not gone. Those of you who are parents, how many times don't you see your children until after the streetlights go on or after sunset? Any of you? Is there one of you that allows their children to come home at dark? Now. How many of you were allowed to come home at dark when you were children? Just one! You lie, you lie, you lie. You lie. My husband grew up here and he tells the most amazing stories about the things he used to get up to. I told him not to tell my children. Please don't tell them that. He was naughty. He's still friends with his primary school headmaster. They still know each other. So he was naughty. I'm going to go into detail about the sensory systems now because I really want to talk about that base level because without that base level that children are not getting these days, you can't expect a child to learn. We can't expect them to learn because they're not moving, they're not playing, and we're expecting them to learn while not providing them all of the things that they need, providing them the opportunity for their bodies to learn. And these things, all of these things are crucial before the age of 7, which is why education up until the age of 7 needs to be less textbook and pencil-based and more physical and movement-based, because they physically need to experience the world before they can learn what's behind it, before they can go further. So can you move on? I'm going to talk about our sensory systems. Contrary to what Dr. Nyoni said, I'm not going to talk about smell. I don't talk about smell or taste, but I talk about 2 others. So vestibular processing, it's movement. It's our sense of movement. And I can't tell you the amount of kids these days who do not know how to move, who cannot move. So our movement sense is our ability to stay upright, to adjust our position. Teachers, how many kids actually sit upright in class now? Half your class? Without a reminder. Not even half the class. So they don't even know how to sit up. So you have a child who is in a class who you remind to sit up constantly, yet they get 20% in their exam. Why? Because they have to concentrate on sitting up and they can't concentrate on the learning because their body's not capable of doing it on their own. I could ask you all to concentrate on breathing for the next 5 minutes and try and remember what I'm saying. And you won't be able to. In the same way that just simply sitting up straight these days is a challenge for our children because their bodies haven't learned their sense of movement yet, because they're not playing, because they're not thrown on the floor as a baby and told to get on with it and just left there. We were just rolling around all over the place. You'd sweep a few things out the way, there'd be no cords or anything, so it wasn't dangerous, but we were left. Now they're stuck in a pen or in a place. Right, so the sense of movement influences our muscle tone. This is all about, I'm sure you get a copy of these, so I'm actually not going to talk through everything that's there. But sense of movement. Can you move on? It's important for posture and balance. So sitting up straight. Our vestibular sense is also responsible for emotion regulation, for our ability to withstand stress and all of that. So you'll often see that the children who really cannot sit nicely and do all of that are the more anxious and emotionally stressed. Okay, and can stay awake. Right, proprioceptive sense is our innate sense of position. Who's seen kids these days who fall off the chair? They can't sit, when they go to sit on the chair, they kind of sit on the side and they're on the floor. Those ones? Right. These children have trouble doing something that they cannot see with their eyes. Just keep that in mind. We'll move on. Auditory. This is always a good one. They will not follow instructions. This child will not listen to me. I should tell you that I've also been a teacher. So you should know that when I say these things, I'm aware of what it's like to teach a class of children. Those children who just will not listen. I give them instructions, they do not follow them. It's frustrating. Actually, half the time they just can't. The message gets lost. And that could be an attention issue, or it could simply be that they have a problem processing that auditory information. They have a problem making the motor response in response to that. So we talk about dyspraxias and things like that. Also the ones that look at you when you've spoken and you're like, and then? You know, do you have something to say? And you can see them, they're thinking about what they're going to say, but it doesn't come out. Next. Sorry, I was told I had longer time than I did, so my apologies if I'm rushing you. Visual processing. Visual processing is incredibly complex. Incredibly complex. So complex I did a 2-hour the Optometry Association of Zimbabwe just on visual processing. Because visual processing is not simply about seeing. It's about what is done with the information. So it's about the messages. Hand-eye coordination. Watch for the kids who have hand-eye coordination. Children who cannot copy from the board. or struggle to copy from here to here? Why are you making mistakes copying from here to here? Or the ones, you know the ones that do this with the margin, so they don't left it? You put a little thing on the margin. It's visual perception. Also, they may have difficulty moving around because they can't see themselves in relation to each other. You can go. Gross motor coordination, the amount of kids who can't skip, hop, or jump with 2 feet together these days is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I recently, my friend won't mind me telling you this story. I recently had a broken foot. Today's my first day in high heels since then. And I asked my friend to step in because to do assessments, I physically have to jump and hop and skip. So I said to my friend, okay, you need to demonstrate this movement. My 45-year-old friend couldn't skip. So I was like, oh, we're in trouble here. Because I'm on crutches in a plaster, and you're supposed to be, so the gardener house, I went and got the gardener to skip. I tested all the people around, and skipping is really important for sequencing. Skipping is important for maths. You think I'm mad when I say skipping, hopping, and jumping, but that ability to sequence a movement is important for math skills. Because if you can't sequence simple movements like that, you can't sequence a math equation. Okay, so there's 5 aspects to gross motor. First one is the planning of being able to do it, stability and balance, the use of 2 sides of the body together, our awareness of where our body is, and that ability to cross the midline. We're seeing a lot more teachers, you're seeing a lot more kids who use both hands instead of one. Huge problem. That's a huge red flag. These guys have physical-based issues. If they're colouring on the left-hand side with the left and they're on the right-hand side with the right hand, huge problem. By the time they reach ECDB, or even earlier, ECDB is late to developing dominance. Those kids are going to have problems reading. Why? Because we don't read the left side of the page with our left eye and the right side of a page with our right eye. We read across from left to right. So if that child cannot work with their hand from left to right, they will not be able to read from left to right because hands come before eyes. So if you have a child who hasn't developed a dominance and cannot work from left to right, they are seriously going to have huge issues reading. And these are the things we need to be picking up early. All of these body-based things. Because you're setting the kids up for success if you've dealt with this early. Next. Motor planning. That's about planning, sorry. You can skip past these. That's just more detail on the few things I've just talked about. How am I doing for time? Well, I'm okay, all right. Fine motor skills. Kids can't hold scissors or pick up pencils, and we take for granted that they can. Because we did. Everyone just had a nice little grasp because we played with our hands. Kids don't actually play with their hands anymore. You look at a toy and you go, oh, press the button, it does something. Whereas we had to MacGyver it and make, my husband talks about making the most amazing wire cars. Now you just buy them on the corner and push them. They're just there. He used to make them. Kids don't make things. They don't do crafts. They don't make things out of nothing anymore. Yeah, so I said about hands. Hands come before eyes. So again, if they've got a problem with using their hands, their ability to use their hands and eyes together are going to be a problem. Okay, sorry, you can go, keep going. Visual perception, that's fine. That's what I'm talking about with visual perception. There's a lot of information in how people perceive visual information. If acuity is fine, then you look further. I always recommend if a child is having trouble reading, if they are falling behind, always have their eyes and ears tested. Because I have now come across a number of children. I was referred a child in grade 2 who was falling behind with reading. And I won't assess them unless they've had eyes and ears test. He couldn't see. The optometrist wouldn't give him the full prescription of glasses because they were too strong. So he had to be weaned into his glasses. And he got to grade 2 before they figured out he couldn't see. Which is pretty scary, actually. He was just the one, so this was, we're going to put him in a remedial class where we're at that point where we think that he's going to fall further behind. And he got a reading merit the next term. because of the progress he made, simply because he could see. So sometimes these things are simple. A lot of the times they're not, but sometimes they are. I was asked to screen a class the other day. This child is well over age in class. Well over age, doesn't follow instructions, she can't hear. She can't. She couldn't hear me. I was being naughty and making noise next to her while she was at the back of the class because she's behind. So they stuck her up the back of the class so it didn't bother the ones in front. So I was making naughty noises under there, and she wasn't bothered by my even naughty noises, let alone the teacher's voice. And I've said, you know what, this is not for me. You need to take this child and have the hearing tested because she can't hear. No wonder she can't speak clearly. No wonder she can't read clearly, because she physically can't hear. So those are very simple things. Tactile perception, touch, yeah, okay. Things that are linked. So our body in awareness in space, our posture and balance, our awareness of body in motion, and all of that needs to be added together. All of this information the children need to get, and all of it needs to be added together. Okay, right. After all, now we're only at the third level of that triangle. How complex is it already? It's pretty complex. They need to learn so much about their bodies. Then you get into organisation. They need to be able to organise themselves. How many kids lose all their pencils? I have 2 children at school. I don't know how many hats they've been through. I really don't. Where's your hat? I don't know. And pens. Okay. I give them an allocation, and then they borrow from their friends. But yeah, hats are a problem. Kids who can't organise themselves. You'll see the ones that are beautifully organised. They have all their things. And they're the ones that are learning nicely. The ones with the things all over the floor. I, no word of a lie, went to a class where this child was actually sitting on top of their books. The desk was empty. There were things all over the floor, and the pile of books was on their chair, and they were sitting on the books. And the books were half over here and half over there. And I wasn't there to see that child. I was actually asked to see another child in the class. And I said, yeah, no, this one. This one's got problems. They're like, yeah, that one, oh, no, we just don't even, that one, we know. I'm like, oh, you must know that these children have to live in a world. So if we are not recognising and dealing with these things now, how is that child going to function? They're sitting on books at school with them all over the place. And literally you would like this, around the child's desk. You couldn't move around the child's desk because it's like, yeah, they're always like that. Don't leave them like that. There's a reason why they're like that. Come on. Social and emotional, we all know about. There's a lot of stuff. Making friendships. Kids who don't have friends at school. Red flags. Kids who can't make friendships. There are problems there if they can't get along. It also may be a problem with the environment as well. So we can't blame kids for all of these things. We need to look at the environments they're learning in. You can keep going. I'm going to jump over. So these are signs, I do want to go through these. These are signs that things are wrong, that are not necessarily indicative of a dyslexia, ADHD or anything like that, because learning problems can be there without a dyslexia or a dyspraxia or anything like that. Children who are oversensitive, undersensitive to touch, they're looking at things they want. Children who sit like this, I always say I never trust children who just sit like that. You go to a function and there's a child just sitting like that. No, it's not normal. Easily distracted, poor attention, delays in speech, motor skills or academic achievement. If I had $1 for every child I had said this child needs an assessment by a speech and language therapist, no, they're just a baby, they'll grow out of it. Okay. They're actually not, because if there is an issue now, they're not going to grow out of it if they're not getting help. Early is such a key. And we're talking ECD A level. These kids need to be looked at ECD A level because you have brain plasticity up until the age of 7. So you can work. You can get them to move. You can have their bodies up until age 7. Kids who don't play with toys, who watch all the other kids And they go, yeah, okay. And they're not interested. They don't know what to do with it. Usually it's the kids who don't know what to do with it. The one who's always last to finish their work. Not because they've been playing. They look like they've been doing, but they're last. They're just slow. We call them slow. Those ones are a problem. Those ones don't know how to move their bodies. They don't know what to do with their bodies. They appear to be disorganized. They have difficulty with transitions when you change the plan, when you mix it up. Immature social skills, and difficulty calming themselves down. We always have those. My son is one of those. There's a few, I've given you some information on different sensory disorders. You can skip past this, I have a few minutes left. Right, so 1 in every 6 children has a sensory issue. We're talking, they could have a sensory issue and dyslexia. They can have a sensory issue and ADHD. They can have a sensory issue and autism. So 1 in every 6 children now has a sensory issue. I can tell you that I graduated almost 20 years ago, which is aging myself, and there's a lot of this I didn't know. I didn't learn at school. I've had to go back. I am constantly going back and updating because children are different now than they were. And every teacher I come across says that. If you've been teaching for long enough, kids are just not the same these days. Is it me? Have I been teaching too long? That's what I always get. Have I been doing this too long? And I'm like, no. It's not you. Children are changing because our lives are changing. Our world is changing. Autism. Autism in the school setting. How many schools have kids with autism? Kids on the autistic spectrum? Anyone? Any school here? You know these kids are there. You know where they are? At home. They're at home. I've recently come across an 11-year-old boy who's never been to school because the school said we can't manage this. And schools are not equipped to manage them. And that's a shame because a huge group, and we're talking an increasing prevalence. We're talking an increasing prevalence of this disorder here in Zimbabwe. And these kids are not going to school. Can I explain? Oh! Do you need an explanation of what autism is? I've got 2 minutes! Okay. Autism is a pervasive developmental disorder. It's characterized by lack of social skills, late or never speech, sensory disorders, so wanting to touch, smell, taste. It's a spectrum. It's so hard to give you in 2 minutes. It's a spectrum. So I work with a number of boys who are on the spectrum, one of who's just written his O-levels at CBC. And I have another young child who is non-verbal, but he goes to school. So it's a huge spectrum of developmental issues that can be accompanied by lots of things. It's really hard to explain unless you come across it. They're often the kids who are looked at as strange. So we're not looking at a dyslexia or just, they don't talk. Most often, if you're talking severe autism, they're not talking. They want to touch things, they want to smell things, they want to feel things, they want to all over. These kids can learn. I work with a delightful young boy who is so clever. So clever. But he was turned away from a number of schools because they said we can't cope. And let me tell you, this child is going far. Because mum has had to put all those supports in place herself. And luckily enough, she's capable of doing that. But there are so many more kids who are just at home, who are not fulfilling their potential in education, because schools and professionals are not equipped to be able to deal with it. So this is one of my missions for all of the partners that are here, is to talk to schools and to talk to people about what autism is, what sensory disorders are, and help schools equip themselves to deal with this, because you can. Once you have knowledge, you can deal with something. It's like dyslexia. It's like dyspraxia. Education is the key. Knowing what you're doing is the key. Knowing what this child is. Knowing what you can do to support them to be in education. Because let me tell you, it's increasing. I'm seeing so many more. And the more people know that I'm around, they go, oh, there's this other child over here that's living here in Bulawayo that doesn't go to school. What can you do? So whenever I work with a child, I go to the school. Because that's key. School is, for an occupational therapist, we look at function. If I'm working with children, what's their main occupation as children? School. Yeah, okay. Right. One of the things I'm finishing, I promise. Always when you are looking at a child that has a challenge, first look at the child. Is there anything you can do to give the child the skills they need? So maybe they just need to move a bit more. Maybe they need to learn things about their body. Maybe they just need a little bit of remedial work. They missed something. Can you give the child the skills? If the child is as skilled as they can be, what are you asking them to do? Can you change what you are asking them to do? Can you make it simpler? Can you put accommodations in place? Can they have someone with dyslexia? Can they have some of the technology that Dr. Nyoni will talk to you about? Can they have a scribe? Can they have someone read for them? Because maybe that task is too difficult. We all know these kids that have the knowledge, and when you talk to them, they have the knowledge, and then they write a test and they get 10%. Why not let them talk to someone who writes for them? Because then they can get 90%. Why not give them a little bit of extra time to sit there and think and put their thoughts into order, put their thoughts into place? These things are there. They're available. So that's the task. And then the next one is to look at the environment. So you've looked at the child, you've looked at the task, look at the environment. Is this the right environment? And environment, we're constricted by how things are at the moment. My children both go to Kumalo. I know what it's like. My son has 54 kids in his class, and I think those teachers are incredible. Because my son is one of the ones that bounces off walls. And they went to a private school before I took them out and sent them to Kumalo. And that teacher gets him. She just gets him. So she sends him. He goes, does the errands, goes to the head and takes this thing and takes this letter here, and he goes there and he visits that and he drops off this book because he does his work. And she knows that she has to change the environment he's in so he's successful. Because he's done his work. He's doing okay. He's actually doing really well. Okay, I need to change it. I need to change it up to make him successful. Because if she asks him to sit, he'll do nothing. He'll just play up all day. So we also have to look at the environment it's in, with the restrictions that we have. Okay, we can move on from there. Right. Just remember, if a child is not behaving or learning in a way that we expect, look why. Don't look at them like they are not capable of learning. There is a reason why they are not learning. Kids want to learn. They really do. There's not a child who says, I'm not going to school, I'm not interested in learning anything. And if they're saying that, right from this age, there's a problem. They either can't learn or they're finding it challenging to learn. What is the reason why they're finding it challenging to learn? And look from tiny. Because if they're refusing to go to school when they're small, then we have a huge issue, and that just gets worse. It just gets worse, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger, and all of a sudden they've failed grade 7, and we've failed that child by not trying to understand why they are having trouble learning. Because there is a reason, guaranteed there's a reason. Because children are not little sociopaths who say, you know what, I am just not interested in anything you have to say. They really want to learn, they want to please people, they want to know. So it's usually just not that simple. Thank you. How's my time?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Mkombe. Another round. The previous speakers made us feel scary as teachers, but now we are really concerned as parents. And Ms. Kumalo, next time when you organize such important events, we should bring our spouses, because this is now becoming really a family matter. Those first 7 years are so important, and we are piling more toys and children. We think they are smart with the screen. More so now when the fourth industrial revolution is threatening, we really have serious problems. Please keep your questions for the plenary. As civic activists, we really want interaction, so we would want to save time for the plenary. And now we change gear and move to the parents, those who have the experience not as consultants, but as people who have lived and experienced it at first hand. I know amongst us in the introduction, we had Mr. and Mrs. Chirwa, but the next presentation or interaction between, for the interaction and our interlocutor will be Mrs. Pamela Chirwa, who is a product of Mzilikazi High School, and she obtained a business administration diploma from the Zimbabwe Institute of Management, then joined the Tracker Group as an export documentation clerk. 2010, she was elevated to executive assistant to the managing director, financing director, and group purchasing manager, a position that she holds up to now. A mother of 2, a daughter and a son. I hope you would have brought them had it not been that it's still school time, if they are still school going. Please, let's give a rounding welcome for our next presentation. We'll allow them to sit for the time, so we have the chair, so that the discussion could be in a more comfortable manner. So feel free when you see them in a seated position. That's how it has been set up. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm pretty sure we're all having a delightful day, especially from the presentations that have been made. So we meet Mrs. Chirwa. She is a parent, and one of her children is going through and is experiencing learning difficulties. So I would want her to at least introduce herself so we can hear a bit more about who she is and a bit of background on how old her child is.
Salibonani lonke. Ngiyabonga ithuba leli ndiphiwe yokuba ngikhulume lani. As they've already introduced me, my name is Mrs. Pamela Chirwa. I am married to Dudak Chirwa, and we've got 2 children. My daughter is 24 now, and my son is 13. My daughter suffers from a learning difficulty. She's got dyslexia, and I'm here to share with you the challenges that we have faced as parents, as a family, because of the condition that my daughter has.
So tell us a bit more about how it all started. Give us a journey, your journey with your child. How did this all start?
Okay. It all started when she was in grade 1. I've always been active in, with my child's education. And I would like to say to you all that we had, my daughter, me and my husband were very young. So when my daughter started school, I was in my early 20s. And my husband was slightly older. So I would go to school for consultation when she started grade 1. And the teacher said to me, she's not doing very well. She's not, I don't know what's wrong, but she's really not doing good. And she said to me, I think you brought her to school while she was still very young. You see, I'm very short. So my daughter takes after me, she's short. So with her frame, like the short frame, the teacher just assumed that maybe she was not yet ready for school, she was young. And then I argued that no, but she's at the right age because she went to school when she was turning 6 on that particular year. And she had been to preschool. So then she later said, okay, maybe let's just wait. There are some children that take time to mature. Maybe as she grows, she'll mature and will be able to grasp the concepts. So, she went through grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And when she was in grade 5, I went to school after receiving the school report to say, no, I don't think she should go to the next grade because her grades are really not good. That's when they suggested to me that they would take her to a special class. So she was transferred to the special class, which she was in special class for 2 years. And there wasn't much improvement, but the teacher said to me, you know what is puzzling with your daughter is when she is doing maths, she's able to do figures. With maths, she's not really bad. But when it comes to reading, she struggles. So when she's doing maths without words, she is able to tackle that maths. But when you add words, it sort of confuses her. So I don't understand exactly what's happening. So that's when I started doing my research then. I was really worried and not knowing what to do. So I started doing my own research. And I went back to the teacher, and I said to the teacher, you know what? I think my daughter suffers from dyslexia. And she said, but I do not know what that is. And I said, it's a learning disability, and I've been reading about it. And she said, I don't know how to help you because I do not know what it is. So she stayed in special class for 2 years without much improvement. She went through primary school, wrote her exams, nothing much came out of that. She proceeded to secondary school. And in secondary school, I'll go to each and every consultation. And when she was in Form 2, Form 3, the teachers would, I'll get there and the teachers would say to me, you know what, your daughter has got a condition. The truth is, she's got a condition because she's that kind of child who participates in class. She's not lazy to do her work. She's good in everything, and her behavior is good. But we just think she's got a condition, which continued up until she was in Form 4. They'll tell me she's got a condition, but nobody told me where to go, where to get help, up until she was in Form 4. And then when she was in Form 4, this particular teacher said to me, but your daughter has got a condition, and I understand now there are schools that have been identified to deal with such cases where they've got special classes for children that have got these kind of conditions. And then I said to him, why wasn't I told this earlier? Because already I think she was preparing to write her O-level exams. And he said, I do not know, but I think that's the best thing that you can do. So there were 2 schools that he identified here in Bulawayo. I think one was Sobogazi and the other one was Hlati, where he said there are classes for those kind of children. But what you have to do is to go to the head, talk to him so that he writes you a referral letter, which you can take to the educational psychologist at the education offices. So I went to see the head, who did not pass the opportunity to tell me that, you know, some of these things are off spiritual, this and that, and you know how we are, and people are so superstitious. And you know, my daughter growing up and experiencing all these things, the people around us and some of our relatives, you tell them about your child's problem, and they'll tell you that, you know, some of these things, you experience that. And there's one particular incident that I would like to mention, considering everything that has been said, by helping these children with difficulties, to appeal to the teachers that I still recall that incident even now, years later, because it was quite an emotional time for me. And now that I think of it, I think if it affected me like that, how about my daughter? You know, a friend who's also a parent, we had children that were going to the same school as my child. One day she told me a story that, you know, my children told me that their teacher was actually making an example of your daughter and parading her work in the class and showing everybody, you know, what she was writing and things like that. I was deeply hurt because I understood that it was not because my daughter was lazy, it was not because she did not want to do her schoolwork, it's just that she had a condition.
These things are spiritual. Do you all think so? I don't think so. As Umama speaks, Lapa, I keep thinking, how many children are facing situations like this? How many children out there have learning difficulties, and teachers and people around them keep saying, this is spiritual. I think it's food for thought for each one of us who is here. I particularly also like the presentations that were made earlier by Rebecca Mkombe and Dr. Nyoni as well. I like the fact that they're helping us connect. When Mrs. Chirwa speaks here, I feel we can now relate, we can connect to what was being said earlier. So I think I'll also give her the opportunity to tell us about the stigma. How has been the stigma? You did mention that it's spiritual. But tell us more, share with us how she has taken all of this.
It has really, you know, had a very negative impact on her life. Because remember, you know how kids can be very cruel. She's at school and it's, you know, kids are cruel. And now here is a teacher making fun of the child, you know. So what will the other children do? Obviously, they will laugh at her, you know. They'll say, even when she does something, or they'll mock and say, this one is dull, she doesn't even know anything, things like that. And it has impacted on, you know, greatly in the sense of relationships, making friends. I think it has been really difficult because, in a way, I think she felt that, you know, people judged her with her academic performance. So she sort of shied away from making too many friends. You see. So, and also, as she grew up, you find out her low self-esteem is low, she has zero confidence, you know, such things. And what worried me more was, this is a girl child who has zero confidence because of the stigma that has been placed around her, because she's failing to, you know, academically, she is not that good, she's not gifted there. But people sort of, our society as a whole, you know, they kind of, even us as parents, I think we kind of rate our children according to how they perform academically and ignore the other talents and maybe capabilities that they may have. And you find that it's only not, the stigma doesn't only affect the child. It also affects me as a parent. You are amongst other parents and they're telling you all about their children's academic experiences, you know, and particularly some of our relatives will come to you and say, oh, you know, it's the end of the term. So your child, how did she do? Like the psychologist said that, uthethu number ba? And it's not information that you really want to share. But, you know, they would want to know, and they'll tell you that your child came out number 1. You know how it is. And for you to say, my child came last of the class, it's really difficult.
So maybe just tell us the kind of assistance that you've received. Who has really come out to assist you? What partners or key stakeholders have really come out to say, Mrs. Chirwa, we know your child has such a difficulty. This is what we can do.
Okay, like I said, that I was only referred to the educational psychologist when she was in Form 4, which we managed to go to the offices. They tested her. They referred us to Msahlandlela, who advised me that, you know, there's nothing much that I can do, but only for me to take her to vocational training centers, which I did. I took her to Methodist Training Center, where she did hairdressing and cosmetology. And because I knew that she had difficulty putting into writing what she has learned, I had to go there and explain to them, to say, you know, my daughter, I am bringing her to you, but please note that she has a certain challenge, you know. And I would like to say this, that because then I wasn't really schooled enough, I would say she's got a learning disability. And when you say to people, my child has got a learning disability, and she's not there at that particular time, some people that really do not have information, they'll think the child is physically disabled. It's got a physical disability. So when you get there with the child and they say the child is perfectly normal, they're talking to her, she's responding quite well and everything, you know, then they're surprised that, but you said your child is challenged. And I said, yes, I said learning. She is challenged with learning, not that she's disabled. Do you see? So I think I had, I don't remember, was it Miss Moyo or someone, that let's please stay away from the word disability. Let's use difficulty. I think it will assist people to understand more. So I had to go there and ask them to say, I am bringing her here, but please note she's got a difficulty, and I am requesting that, if possible, please test her verbally instead of asking her to write an exam. They were quite helpful, and they agreed. And she did well. She got a certificate. And ladies, this is what she does. I don't have to go to the salon for my manicure. She does it for me. And after that, I took her to the other vocational training center where she did catering. And still, I had to go and explain and ask them to test her verbally, which they assisted me and were understanding enough and did that. And she obtained a certificate. But as a parent, this is a girl child. I am still worried that my child has obtained, you know, these certificates. She is able to do this and that. But I'm worried that she should operate independently. She should be independent, you know, go through the world by herself. But if she can't read, because she went through high school and she couldn't even read a paragraph. She was unable to read a paragraph. Can you see how bad it was? So I started researching again. I was worried about that. And then one day I was talking to a colleague and a friend about my problems, my fears for my daughter, that, you know, if she can't read, she can't do this for herself. She's a girl child, she's vulnerable to abuse and stuff like that. So my friend said to me, you know, she belongs to the Computer Society of Zimbabwe. She says there's a conference that we had some time ago, and I met this man, and she was talking about these difficulties. Maybe you should talk to him. He might be able to assist. Okay, so that's how I met Dr. Nyoni. And then I communicated. Mr. Nyoni you know, said we should come through. He's willing to assist. So he assisted us, and when we went to Dr. Nyoni, we went as a family. Took my daughter there, my husband was there, and my son was there, so that we are all at the same level to understand and be able to help my daughter. Mr. Nyoni assessed her and identified the problem, and you know, drew up a plan, a personal plan that was particular to my daughter, to see how she can be helped. He started working with her, and after Mr. Nyoni started working with her, we noticed a remarkable, you know, improvement, because now she can tackle new words on her own. She is more confident, because Dr. Nyoni not only worked on her being able to read. Remember now she was 19, 20, 21, I think. So we are working, he was working on her self-confidence, on her esteem, you know, as well as helping her learn to read. So when he started working with her, things started improving. And now, you know, she is able to tackle new words. She does no longer shy away from asking us to say, Mommy, please, can you read this word for me? What does it say? Yet before, she was not comfortable enough to do that. You know, I would sit there and wonder what she's typing on WhatsApp. She was using WhatsApp, but I wonder what she's typing on WhatsApp. But now, you know, after working with Dr. Nyoni, she's more confident. She can come to us, me, the father, her brother, to say, you know, this is a new word, what does it say? Or if she wants to type something, can you please spell this word for me? And working with Dr. Nyoni, he introduced her to computer programs that can assist her, you know, to work around. Like he said that, you know, this is a condition that she will have to live with for the rest of her life. So she has to develop coping mechanisms to say, okay, if I'm faced with this, this is what I can do. So he has been helping her do that. And she's improved greatly, and I'm happy with the progress. Of course, she is still a work in progress. We are not yet where we want to be.
I think all I can say is, wow. I think this woman deserves a round of applause. I was going to say she deserves the bells. All right. I think your story is quite inspiring, especially for those listening and for those seated here who are with us, getting to understand where the problem started, how it all started, what the journey has been like for you and your child, and for you as a family as a whole. Someone did mention that it's becoming a family matter. Indeed, it is. It starts from the family. It starts from within. And I think that it is important that we're having people like Mrs. Chirwa Lapa to explain to us what happens and how does it feel like nxa umntwana learning difficulty. The speakers who spoke ekuqaliseni did mention the ways in which okuqalisa ngakho, but now we're getting to understand in the practical, actual sense ukuthi kwenzakala kanjani. How does it start? And thank you, Mrs. Chirwa, for being with us here. And I would like to know, I'm quite interested in knowing ukuthi, what's your take, or what do you think can be done differently by different stakeholders? You mentioned Dr. Nyoni, that he has assisted you kakhulu, but there is government stakeholders, there are CSOs, there are different people within lapha koBulawayo who can assist. What do you think can be done?
I think it all starts with the teachers. I believe they are the key stakeholders in all this thing, because they are the ones that start working with a child while they are very young. Because as I sit here, I believe if I had managed to get assistance from my daughter while she was younger, she'll be at a better standing today. So I would like to appeal to the teachers that please, for a moment, like the other speaker says, whatever you encounter, I know sometimes it's very difficult, you are overwhelmed, there's a lot, that you have to deal with. I have great respect for your profession because some of you work very hard and they even take their extra time to assist our children. But at the same time, there are some of you that fail us because you will find that there's a child who's got a difficulty, and what you do is just push the child to the back, not even try to reach out to the parent to say, I think your child has got a problem, and I think this is the way that they can be assisted. At the same time, I know that there are some parents that are not forthcoming and would not want to be part of their children's journey. It happens. We are people and we are different. So, but at the same time, I am saying, I'm appealing to you, make an effort. Don't give up on that child. I am happy now that the new curriculum is more inclusive and, accommodates more children with learning disabilities, unlike the old curriculum. You notice that my child went to school on the old curriculum. That was really not very much accommodative to children with learning difficulties. And I do not think the teachers were, they had enough information about what to do when you encounter such things. So I am really happy now that the new curriculum has tried to accommodate them. While at least everybody else around me, and maybe some of the teachers, I've got teachers in my family who were complaining that they do not like the new curriculum, this and that. It was quite a welcome development to me, because to me personally, I felt happy that now, children like mine that have got difficulties can now, get all the help and things like that. And at the same time, if we could get maybe corporates or in the government, if it could provide more resources towards the education sector so that they are able to help our children. Because sometimes the challenge are resources. They would really want to, help, and maybe the resources are limited. Like I have noticed that the resources are limited. But at the same time, for those that can afford, it's good that people like Dr. Nyoni